Well, no doubt some great inventions are right now in basements and garages, growing in laboratories and sitting on hard drives. Maybe it's the next big app, maybe it's the next big cure, or somewhere in between. Tonight, we take the pulse of St. Louis's startup community, the effort to create a place where entrepreneurs can succeed or fail and try again. And if they make it, is this a place they'll want to stay? Is it a place they can afford to stay? Stay tuned.
And on Stay Tuned, you drive the discussion. We bring local experts, journalists, and civic leaders together to have tough conversations for a stronger St. Louis. Tweet us your insights on tonight's topic, and you've got a seat at the table. With a few national experts and a panel of community members, this is the show bringing more light and less heat to the issues that matter. So stay tuned.
Well, it was an exciting week for startups in St. Louis, and we have some of the product of that excitement here at the table with us tonight. Let me do some introductions. Tom Cohen, Nanopore Diagnostics, and Chris Motley, Better Weekdays, I like that, and Daniel McFarland, Diversify Us. I like that too. I like them all. But before we talk about what each of you have done this week and some of the success you've had, let's go to Jim Kircher to set the table for the show as only Jim can.
Talk about energy, but what do you expect when you fill a room with inventors, innovators, salespeople, entrepreneurs?
It's an application for your smartphone that plays the Spanish soundtrack of a movie.
It's called Freddie Lee's Ghetto Sauce. As a new type of classified ad platform.
Tech, bioscience, consumer products, manufacturing, they were all at last night's Startup Connection 2014 event. You couldn't walk a few feet without getting a pitch, a business card, a sample, a demonstration.
But it's a different process.
The next room over, you could listen to entrepreneurs practicing part of their craft, the 1-minute pitch.
The outer shell of the helmet and the inner foam padding that can drastically
We're actually revolutionizing the way that you interact with your phone case.
Lots of different kinds of ventures, great ideas in need of markets and money. Nanopore is one of St. Louis's promising biomedical startups. They've developed a quick way to determine what kind of antibiotic you need, if any. A test that can be done in 15 minutes in a doctor's office.
It's a biological engineering development, so it's a diagnostic tool. It's something that takes a clinical sample like blood, mucus, or urine, and has a very innovative, quick way of looking to see if there's bacteria there.
All of this, put on by the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership and the Regional Chamber, is part of the efforts to attract and nurture entrepreneurs and keep them here when they succeed. And there was money being handed out. Some 20 entrepreneurs were awarded prizes that ranged up to $4,000. And then there was the big money, the Startup Challenge, with the top prize of $50,000. The winner was Nanopore. While St. Louis has never had a shortage of ideas, it's been a different story when it has come to investment capital. But it's getting better. A recent study said tech financing grew 1,200% here in the past year, making St. Louis not the biggest, but the fastest growing city when it comes to funding tech startups. For Stay Tuned, I'm Jim Kircher.
So we have all winners at the table here. This is, you just saw Tom Cohen, Nanopore Diagnostics, was the winner of the Startup Challenge. You won last night. They handed you that big check. By the way, that will not fit in the ATM, never mind. Okay, so give us your polished pitch. Give us, what is Nanopore?
Yeah, so we're developing a 30-minute test for diagnosing bacterial infections, something that could function inside the physician's office to ensure they knew exactly what they were trying to treat before they prescribed an antibiotic.
You also won last night. Give us your how do we make better weekdays?
Well, the concept is basically eHarmony for jobs. So it's getting data that goes beyond the resume to make it easier for companies to hire folks who are likely to perform.
Not only are these good elevator pitches, these must be short buildings, because these are good. I like it. This is even faster than I thought. Daniel, same question. Diversify us.
Well, the idea is that there are lots of ways for people to meet people that are similar to them, in the same way that I met my wife through Match.com. But there aren't many ways for you to meet people that are in different social circles than you. So Diversify Us helps you cross those social circles and meet people who you are different. Maybe you share something, but you're different in some key ways. Perhaps you have different political standpoints or socioeconomic levels, and we're connecting disparate people.
What are you going to do with the $50,000?
We're going to use it as salary. We're going to hire an engineer. So we're going to bring a new team member on. So creating a job.
I feel like this is kind of like, I kind of want to like talk to a songwriter and like, where did you get the idea? Or how in the world do you start writing a song? Where in the world does an entrepreneurial idea like this come from? How does the spark start?
Well, I can't imagine what other people do. Mine, I was sitting in the car with my wife talking about some things. My wife was working with a group that's addressing some Ferguson-related issues, and with all the unrest and the fear that people have about what might happen once the verdict comes out. We were having a conversation, and I was thinking about Startup Weekend because I was going the very next day, and I didn't have an idea. But while we were talking, it occurred to me that we need, because my wife and I met through Match.com, how would I meet some people? Because I think that what happens is that people in these groups fear each other because they don't know anything about people in these other groups. And so we think that if we can connect people, create interesting conversations, and people realize, you know what, I have more in common with these people that I thought I was so different from. I have more in common with them than I realized, and I think it can reduce the tension. It can create opportunities for people to go in places where they would not have gone.
We got to have you back for a whole host of other shows, because there's a lot to talk about just on that topic alone. But you did not have an idea one day and you did the next. Is that a talent of yours? Is that the environment you were in? How does this go?
I believe I probably have ideas on one day that I didn't have the previous day all the time, but not all of them could be marketable concepts. And I wasn't sure how this one could be. I had help from other people once I presented the idea, because I wasn't sure if I was going to pitch it, but people convinced me that I should because of the time of just where we are in our time and place in St. Louis, and also that it's something that we believe that could apply within the context of a business, within the context of a student body at a college university, but we think it has broader appeal and broader impact, can really change lives.
Is anybody to the point where you're actually making a profit at this point, turning any money around?
Revenue. Profit is always hard to come by because you have customers that want you to do more and more things for them, which is good because you're solving a problem that they're paying you for. And all I care about now is usage and revenue. And then the next step is, okay, how to make it profitable.
And do you want to do it here? If so, why? In St. Louis?
Well, for us, we started our company in Chicago, my co-founder and I. We came down to St. Louis because of the Capital Innovators Accelerator here. And that was about 8 months ago, and we've stayed since we graduated. And what I like about St. Louis and the ecosystem here is it's easier to access folks. It's a smaller environment, and so you can meet somebody. They say you have to meet a guy here, you got to meet a gal there, and that meeting can happen the next day. And so my vision is to stay here, but you need the community rallying around startups like they are, because it's a great opportunity for everyone involved.
Same experience for you?
So, we were here from the beginning. I'm born and raised in St. Louis, but yeah, I have had the same experience. It's been both impressive and very easy to make the connections we need to move this thing forward. People have been very willing to, from the beginning, when we were just just an idea. We didn't even own the technology yet. People have been really willing to give us their time. So yeah, I've had the same experience.
Aside from larger checks, if you are given a magic wand and you can change or do anything to this community, what would it be to help your business, to help your ideas?
Well, we certainly want to get the word out and get people to try to sign up on our website, diversifyus.com, if I can say, so that they can be a part of some of the early trials that we're going to do before we launch in January. At least that's the current plan. So if we can get a lot of people to try it out, we can refine our matching technique.
But you could do that anywhere, I'm guessing.
We could, but we believe that the problem we're trying to address, for us, we see it as a homegrown type of problem that exists here, not that it doesn't exist elsewhere, but we want St. Louis to not simply be known when it comes to Ferguson for some of the unrest that we've seen. We want to be known for the people that created a way for people to cross boundaries and to interact and to reduce tensions and to create relationships that they wouldn't otherwise create. We want that for St. Louis because we're from St. Louis and we love our city.
Now that the incentives are, you've got the incentive to be here, is there an incentive to stay here?
Well, it's kind of answering both of your questions. I think if I waved my magic wand, I think I would encourage the business community to get more involved. There's three things entrepreneurs need, and it probably, in my opinion, in this order: a customer with a big problem, technical talent to build the solution, and then capital. And I think that if you have businesses in the community who are just willing to sit down and talk about problems, not let me see your solution and they decide if they want to buy it or not, but to sit down and talk about problems, it's our job to figure out a solution. But I think that engagement from companies can really spur innovation, and it actually will promote more entrepreneurship here in St. Louis.
Is there talent here that you guys can draw upon?
Yeah.
That you need to build your business?
Yeah, there's, for the specific employers we're looking to hire, yes. I think there is, and kind of getting back to the original question, there is, in my specific area, one thing we are missing here locally is people that have done it before, molecular diagnostics, and succeeded and kind of exited and are now looking to get back. And I think that's something that is soon on the horizon because I think there's some companies that are close.
Guys, thanks. Stick around if you can. We'd like to talk to you more towards the end of the show, but for now, let's meet another entrepreneur from the Startup Challenge.
Hi, my name is Sarah Badaman. I am the founder of HIPAA. Healthcare organizations and their business associates are required to comply with a little thing called HIPAA. Well, actually, it's not that little. It's thousands of pages of governmental regulations that could result in millions of dollars in fines if these organizations do not comply with HIPAA properly. Unfortunately, they lack the necessary tools to help them manage their HIPAA compliance programs. That is, until now. HIPAA helps healthcare organizations and their business associates create, implement, and manage their customized HIPAA compliance programs. From creating their policies and procedures, to training their staff, sending out security reminders, and managing all the other tasks required by HIPAA, you can do it all on HIPAA. A trek may be a long and arduous journey, but with HIPAA, we're here to help.
Okay, we've got the seating squared away. Let's do introductions. These are our journalists here, and no pitches from you guys. You're going to give us the straight story, I can already tell. Okay, Brian Felt, welcome back. Thanks for being here. St. Louis Business Journal, David Nicholas, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ed Domain with Techly. Okay, so it's always positive when you talk to these entrepreneurs. That's part of their DNA, I feel like. You cover the startup scene. Give us the pulse. Is it on the way up? Is it on the way down? Is it flat?
It is on the way up. There's definitely a critical mass happening in St. Louis, and certainly this week is a banner week for St. Louis startups, whether it's the Startup Connection or Startup Weekend. Things are happening, companies are on the move, and they're getting resources that they need.
Oh, I agree, definitely on the way up, and more money is flowing into the startup sector. More firms are having the confidence to go out and try something, but there are still there are shortages. The amount of money, venture capital flowing into St. Louis is maybe 0.5% of the national pool. That it's really not much in the overall scheme of things. We need more capital. We need more talent, especially talented people who have done it before, who have some experience with starting and growing companies.
I would call it growing pains. We have a lot of good things happening. There is capital flowing into companies. There's more than there was before. I've only been here 2 years, and while I write about them, I'm a startup person myself. But what we need is more. So while we can talk about you know, David's right. We need more money, we need this, we need that, but we have those things, we just need more of it. But I think it's all coming, and I think we're going the right way. I know we're the envy of a lot of other cities right now and people I talk to over there.
It's just between the two trains of thought on what do we need more of, more money or more talent, and it's kind of the chicken or the egg scenario. Where does talent follow money, or does money follow talent? Well, the answer is both, and you know, truth be told, we need both of them.
And when you say talent, are you saying talent to invent the idea, or talent to be the worker bees and code what the person with the idea comes up with?
I would say both. I mean, in all stages of a company, whether it's graduates coming out of WashU or SLU to be software developers, or even doing marketing or doing any number of things for companies, and then also at the same time creating company ideas.
He had an idea on a Tuesday and went to a challenge on a Wednesday. Actually, I guess it was probably a Friday and a Saturday, since it was the weekend challenge. Is that unique to St. Louis, or unique to some of the things we've got going on here, or is that happening all over the country?
Well, I think the kind of events like Startup Weekend and the environment that we're fostering here encourages that sort of thing. I think more people are coming up with ideas because there are competitions like Arch Grants, and because they see that there are some potential funding sources like the biogenerator. That's going to draw people who have ideas into the startup sector.
We're the envy of other cities. Are we? Why do you say that?
Not all cities, but I mean, you still have your New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, but a lot of mid-tier cities are jealous of what we're doing. They see the growth in the amount of venture capital invested. Our increase is greater than other states that I can compare to, and I don't want to slam anybody, but I travel around and talk to folks in other cities, and they ask me all the time how they can get a program like Arch Grants. How are we attracting so many entrepreneurs from different states, different countries? And so we're racing ahead of a lot of people right now.
Are we still too safe, though, with our purse strings a little bit? Sometimes you get you hear from people that think maybe we're a little risk averse in this town, on this topic specifically.
Well, I do hear that a lot, especially from people like the entrepreneurs you just talked to. I mean, there's a lot of wealth in St. Louis. It's sort of deep pockets, short arms phenomenon, where there's a lot of old money here, but it's fairly conservative. It's in the bond market or something. There hasn't been a real history of successful entrepreneurs here to get people excited about investing in it. So maybe we're just one big grand slam away from that.
Well, and there's certainly a difference between a company failing and then that entrepreneur not doing anything else with his or her time, and then a company failing and that entrepreneur going and joining another team of an existing startup or coming up with a completely new idea.
A place to rebound.
Exactly. I think Tom had mentioned it before. What the city needs is more serial entrepreneurs to get back into the game and join more of these teams and develop more companies.
It's a question I want to ask the guests that are still to come, but what is our culture of failure? What's it like here in St. Louis?
The culture of failure?
Of failure.
Is good.
It is good.
Yes.
It's okay to fail in St. Louis.
Yes, I know a number of entrepreneurs who, other CEOs of companies have said they'd love to hire them if and when they fail, but of course they don't plan on doing so. But one of the things I think you're also going to see is in the next 5 years, we're going to have entrepreneurs that have grown their companies, successfully exited, sold or acquired, and they're going to be the new round of investors here in the city. So keep watching. Within the next 5 years, I think you're going to see a big explosion as we have that happen.
We already have companies that have been acquired. Answers was acquired. Earbuds has been acquired. Other companies have, and they have their majority of their workforce is still here. It remains to be seen if they stay here for the long term, but right now they are, and some of them are getting back into that funding game or the startup game.
And we have several of the founders or CEOs of startups that have been acquired are doing sort of entrepreneur in residence things at the various accelerator and incubator programs in town, kind of looking for the next deal, trying to help the people who are just at the idea stage get to that point where they're ready to be funded and grow.
I'll put 3 people on the spot.
Okay.
Drew Winship of Juristat,
okay.
Gabe Lozano of Lockerdome, Jeb Eberlin for Top Ops. I would be shocked if you don't see them start their own investment fund in the next 3-4 years.
Okay, so how big of this entire St. Louis pie is what we're talking about tonight? How much of this startup scene does how much does it make up of our overall economy? How significant is it?
In terms of jobs, it's small, probably a few hundred, less than 1,000 jobs certainly, but it's the dynamism that's important. It's the growth. I mean, if we have several hundred today, 5 years ago we probably had maybe a couple dozen
Absolutely.
people working in firms like this.
Arch grants just a few years ago, probably maybe 50, 100 jobs. Now I think they're up to more than 500 jobs. Capital Innovator is another accelerator here. I think they're more than 200 jobs now. So it's kind of young. Arch grant's only 2 or 3 years old. Capital Innovator is the same. They're growing right now, and the jobs are coming. It's not going to be a massive slice of everything, but it's definitely growing.
Guys, stick around because I'm going to want your questions at the big roundtable all skate when everybody comes back, and we want your questions as well. Find us with hashtag StayTunedSTL. Let's see what you're saying. Okay, let's have a little, we titled this Entrepreneur Real Talk, so no holds barred.
All right.
Cliff Holtkamp, welcome back, Olin Business School, Washington University. Amy Dunn, Prosper. Finish the title for me.
Prosper Women Entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much, just testing you.
Thank you.
Travis Sheridan, Venture Cafe here in St. Louis. Okay, so your thoughts. You've heard a few tables so far. We have the very rosy picture. We have a little bit of a honest picture. What do you think?
Well, I think that we as a community shouldn't be afraid to be excited and positive about the things that are happening. There's a certain Midwestern sensibility that can creep in where we don't celebrate enough. And I think it's important to recognize that celebrating doesn't mean that you've stopped trying, doesn't mean that you're resting on your laurels. And I believe that we can both be proud of what we've accomplished and still set a high bar for the future. So you can do a mix.
I think those of us in the community are geeking out a little bit on entrepreneurship this week.
It's a big week.
It's been a big week, and
yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. And looking at Startup Connection last night with 1,300 people in the room and giving away some money, we should celebrate it. And I think we were talking in the back room a little bit about how the folks outside of St. Louis are sometimes the biggest proponents, and we don't talk about it enough here. And we should. We can't be totally in the echo chamber, but.
Well, I think the more that we celebrate, the more other people want to be involved in it. Investors want to be involved, other startups want to be involved, people from other communities want to be involved. And I think we can take a critical look at it and be honest, but there are times, especially this week, it's Global Entrepreneurship Week, it's our time to celebrate. And so, yeah, we should have a little bit more swagger this week.
All right, you guys celebrate. I'll be cynical.
All right,
we'll see where this lands.
Drive the conversation.
I'm getting this, analogies can often go wrong, so forgive me if this goes sideways, but I'm thinking of like, I'm a really terrible campfire builder, but I'm awesome with the lighter fluid. But then it never takes. And I give it the lighter fluid, I give it the lighter fluid, I give it the lighter fluid. But then when it's on its own and it has to sustain itself, are we just running on lighter fluid here? How long?
Well, I would, so if we think of lighter...
Are we tracking here?
Yeah, no.
So
don't totally follow the analogy.
Yeah, but I would say...
I'm saying, are we only just enticing people to come with weeks like we just had? Or is there anything that this is doing on its own?
No, I mean, I think that we have this week is an indicator of a series of things that's been happening for the last 5 years, 3 years especially. And if I use lighter fluid as analogous to cash, right? Money to keep the fire burning for entrepreneurs. St. Louis is still one of the most capital efficient places, so you don't have to keep squirting lighter fluid on there. But maybe we need a little lighter fluid to get going. But we're also very good at fanning the flames here. We're very good at stoking the fire. We're very good at follow-on funding. So MTC and Arch grants and all these seed funding programs have resulted in de-risked deals, so there's follow-on funding. There's more fuel coming in. The real test is will we start buying things from ourselves? Will we start buying local so that revenue can be the fuel that really drives it? Kindling is great, but we need big logs, and big logs come from revenue.
Yeah, I would actually, to use your analogy, I would argue we're more of a community of firewood than lighter fluid. Absolutely. That we've got the basis for great things. We've got an incredible talent pool. We've got actually one of the envies of other mid-market cities is the university system here. to have schools like Washington University and St. Louis University in such a densely packed area, so accessible, feeding so much talent, is absolutely the envy of places like Kansas City or Indianapolis or a lot of other of our peer cities. We also have incredible local ecosystem structure. The number of community organizations we have in St. Louis is far beyond what normal cities have. It really is.
We talk about ecosystem a lot on the previous shows that we've done, and we talked about kind of building that. Just remind everyone, what do we mean by this whole ecosystem, and is it improving? What do we need to do with it?
I think it's getting bigger, and it's getting, the fabric is strengthening a little bit. So we mean all of the support organizations, we need the funding, we mean the entrepreneurs themselves, and how that whole system of support kind of goes together. And I want to take a look at that kindling for a minute, because I think we're seeing, to go back to your fabulous, we love it.
We're going to go down this road.
No, you didn't. You doubted me at first, and now you're all on board.
We're with you. I think we're seeing this ground swelling of support, kind of the underbrush of that fire you're building, as we take a look at some of the awards that were given last night at Startup Connection for some of these maybe underserved markets. So we have women, we have minorities, we have veterans. We talk a lot about the big sexy businesses, and that's very important. But I think we're getting some breadth with some of those other businesses that we don't normally include in the ecosystem, and we're finding some organizations that are helping those folks find their way through that fabric.
So to use the analogy, we're not just burning white pine anymore, right? There's some dark walnut in there too.
You know, Amy points out some of the how the ecosystem has evolved and is getting more sophisticated. That we have organizations that now are just not focused on entrepreneurship, generally speaking. They're actually finding niches where we can excel, and I think that's a really key point. And somebody asked me what is different from a year ago than what's happening today. And in the last year, I think St. Louis has really started identifying those areas where we can actually excel above other regions, other cities. Areas like fintech, where the 630 Accelerator is bringing in top fintech companies from around the world, because with the financial services corporations here, we can actually do fintech better than you can do fintech in Silicon Valley. That might not be true of every kind of technology business, but it's true of that. Same with ag tech, with Yield Lab, bringing in the top ag tech companies from around the world. They had applications from every continent in the world. They even had applications from Kazakhstan, and they had every country in South America except for Paraguay and Uruguay. It was extraordinary, the amount of interest for some entrepreneurs from all over the world wanting to come to St. Louis, because we've got a great story at ag tech. Prosper is doing the same thing for female entrepreneurship. We've got programs for minority and veteran entrepreneurship. So what we're seeing is the ecosystem's evolving, that it's not just now entrepreneurship in general, hey, start some business, we don't care what it is, let's just start doing something, where we're really finding areas where we can get unique traction and we can excel. I think that's an important part of our maturing as an organization.
Our identity. Things to, like arts and food and culture and education. I talk to artists a lot about how they are innovators and they are entrepreneurs. And I think that's kind of some of the understory that we don't always talk about. But we've got a lot of great strength in that in St. Louis as well.
When I was putting my board of directors together for Venture Cafe, the first two people I thought of were Christina Van Dyke from the Pulitzer Foundation and Jim McCarter, who was with the Divergence, and then acquired by Monsanto, and then now is a biotech entrepreneur. Like, we have both of these folks, and they're both innovators and entrepreneurs in their own right.
And you all just touched on something that we're going to talk about at the next table, which is diversity and why is that important. But first, let's take another look at social media. So now we have Talia Goldfarb with myself Belts at the table. We switched her out because we're going to talk about the diversity of the ecosystem. Why, we started touching on it. Yeah. You don't have to stick with the analogy necessarily, but why is this important?
Well, I think it's important because it represents what St. Louis is, and I really view St. Louis as a microcosm of the larger, United States. We have a minority population, a variety of minorities. We have a educated population, we have an uneducated population, we have urban, we have suburban, and if we want to be a holistic city, then we actually have to reach out to all those communities. And there are, I always give the analogy that there are people on the north side of St. Louis that maybe don't use the term entrepreneur, but they use the word hustler all the time, and they're really speaking the same language. And I think it's beholden to us as those that serve entrepreneurs to really reach out to all of them so that they all have a place at the table.
So how is this ecosystem developing? Are we just building another old boys club here, or is it different, would you say?
No, I think it feels different. About halfway into my business, I've been in business for 10 years, and about 5 years in was when I kind of opened my eyes to see what was around in St. Louis and dove into some of the mentor networks. And
that's
yes,
interesting. Why did it take 5 years?
I was a mom, and my kids were in school, and it was a more reasonable time for me to have the focus and to think bigger. And I think that's what those organizations did for me. And yes, they were predominantly men, but they were welcoming. And I'm so excited about Prosper and having a more female-focused avenue for people. But that being said, and even welcoming in many different groups and having ways for people to feel included and supported, the diversity, I think, and having people from all walks of life mentor you is also important. If I just had female mentors, I don't think my business would be necessarily in the same place. Everyone asks different kinds of questions, and everyone else kind of pushes you differently. So I think the diversity is important on both sides.
Prosper does what, and why is it needed?
Prosper was launched in January to address this gender gap in entrepreneurship, and we always talk about it being not a gender issue or a feminist issue, but an economic development issue. Half of the people here are women, and I've done a lot of work with early stage entrepreneurs, and it's just true, kind of what Talia touched on, that a lot of times women are doing their startups in the midst of everything else that they're doing. And so we use the word tribe a lot at Prosper, and it kind of allows folks that are doing what Talia did to kind of reach out and find their tribe and look around and say, here's where all the women entrepreneurs are. So we have a Prosper Startup Accelerator that will fund some of those women. We have an institute side that will do some of the education and networking and just bring those women together and kind of give them a voice so they're not only, we're not only growing their businesses, but eventually they're at the other side of the table where they're giving some of that funding away, and that's kind of really our long goal.
But we still have a long ways to go also. I mean, again, we don't want to paint a rosy picture. There is still inequity that takes place. There aren't the investors that are looking to diversity always. They're still looking for the best business opportunity. And so I think that what we have to do is position a lot of different opportunities as being viable business opportunities and offer mentoring that resonates with these different people groups.
Yeah, we've had some grief in the past when we do entrepreneur shows. Are we bad bookers for the show, or is the community not that diverse to draw on?
And the feedback you've been getting is that it's not
that the show itself doesn't look very diverse. When we talk entrepreneurship, I
think it takes work. I mean, it really does take work. You can't, if we're lazy about things, we're going to get a very homogenous group. But if we are diligent and not trying to fill a quota, but just thinking to ourselves, we need people in these disciplines. Can we think of people that are from diverse backgrounds? And if you make it purposeful, then you will fill a panel, like a lot of the group that's here today is very diverse. We have 2 women and 1 minority. Your first panel had 2 African Americans. I mean, I think it's working, and it's not fabricated and it's not false. It really is authentic.
You have to think about it, though. I mean, we have a really, we're here to serve a diverse group of women, and we look in our ranks and we think of all kinds of diversity. So not just the diversities that we think about right away, but what is the age range of the women that we're serving? There's people right out of college. There's folks in our groups that have retired, and this is kind of their second career in entrepreneurship. Are we representing a lot of different industries? So kind of diversities of all kinds, because those are the voices that you want to hear to kind of lift everyone up. But you have to be thoughtful about it. It is an effort.
And I think to Travis's point, I think as tides turn, things will change, because like you said, when you hear about the mentor group I was in, I heard about from a friend. And as you have diversity in the entrepreneurial world here, those people reach out to their own communities, their own families, their own social circles, and create more diversity.
And if entrepreneurs are hustlers, like you say, then
Right.
it's got to make business sense.
Definitely. It all has to make business sense.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it all does.
Yeah.
And diversity does in your mind.
Yeah.
It makes it makes great economic sense. I mean, if you can sell to a broader audience, then you can make more money, and I think that's a good thing.
Guys, thank you very much. And as I ask the others, please stick around. We've got the group coming back together. But first, Anne-Marie Berger caught up with Steve Young, founder of Cynic System, and talked to him a year out from where we are right now.
The craft beer industry in St. Louis is booming.
When we started in 1991, Anheuser-Busch and Boulevard were the only other breweries in the state of Missouri. We were the first brew pub since Prohibition. We have now grown to nearly 30 within a 75-mile radius of St. Louis.
Nationwide, craft brewers saw a 20% growth in just 1 year, and there are plenty of beer geeks to support it.
They're uber geeked up about all the things that beer is and beer is becoming and can be.
Beer has been around for a long time, so it's hard to believe that there's something untapped in this market, but there is. Meet Steve Young, founder of the Cynic draft system. It has been likened to the Keurig coffee brewing system, mainly because of how it will look on your counter. But it doesn't brew beer, it dispenses it.
This is just a prototype, right? Yeah, so this was the initial prototype, and it'll give enough.
Young explains the packaging is like a flexible aluminum can, and your favorite craft beer can stay fresh in the 1-gallon container for at least 30 days.
Essentially, the consumer will be able to fill any one of these bags at any tap. The bag will essentially look something like this, fully pressurized, and the customer inserts this bag into the dispenser, clicks on something onto the valve that we're going to have onto this tap, and the machine will keep it cold and it'll pressurize the basically mini keg. Consider this to be like a little mini keg.
A mini keg right on your counter. Well, Young wasn't the only one that thought that was a good idea. He was a winner in the 2013 St. Louis Startup Challenge. He was awarded $100,000 from AOL co-founder Steve Case, and his Cynic draft system gained nearly 2,200 backers, raising almost $650,000 on Kickstarter, making it the most successful Kickstarter campaign out of St. Louis. And now his little startup is part of the Cambridge Innovation Center in the Cortex District, St. Louis's hub for innovative startups.
Essentially, it's the newest incubator in St. Louis, really meant for the companies that are trying to accelerate. So less in kind of like the new idea stage and more in the growth stage company.
And the growth stage is exactly where Cynic is at.
So we'll launch in St. Louis in April, hopefully. That's what we're shooting for. And then we will have basically a launch in 2 new cities every week for the next 8 to 10 weeks. And our goal is to hit every major market in the United States. And then get that all in by June. So 20 to 30 cities, 3 months. And then once that happens, little resting period, and then in September we launch worldwide.
Now for the Cynic system to really take off, Young needs consumers to buy it and brewers to fill it. But if it does what he says it will do, local craft brewers are open to selling their beer in Cynic packaging.
You can get a lot of different beers in bottles, cans, and kegs. What the Cynic seems to answer is you can now have, assuming let's make the blanket assumption it's available everywhere at any pub, you can fill the Cynic with any beer that's on tap. Once again, the consumer wins, having all these great choices available.
The growing number of craft breweries in this region makes St. Louis a great place for Young to grow his business. And the push and support for innovation in this town hasn't hurt either. Has it been helpful for you to be here?
Yes, no, it absolutely has. St. Louis has a lot of things to offer that, all the other cities I was looking at do not. In terms of the hype, yeah, you absolutely have to have hype. Is the vision bigger than what's happening? Hopefully, because that inspires more growth to happen. I think that the best of St. Louis is still to come. I think we still need to get more financial proceeds flowing into the city, and that'll happen when you have a couple successful startups. So there is a lot of churn, but once we get, you know, a Dropbox or a Facebook type company come out of the city, then you'll start to see the money come in, and that's when it really gets exciting.
Well, and maybe it's a draft beer system.
Or maybe it's a draft beer startup. That's my hope.
For Stay Tuned, I'm Anne-Marie Berger.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Okay, so what's at stake? Let's talk about this with our guests. Back at the table, Cliff Holtkamp and Ed Domain from the Olin Business School and Techly, but also with us is Katie Jamboretz, the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. Katie, I'll start with you, because I want to, before we kind of say what's at stake, I want to kind of pick up on what Cliff was talking about, that our identity is kind of starting to shake out a little bit, maybe? Like maybe we're better at some things than others? Are you seeing that? Or
really good at a couple of things, but we're really good at a couple of things that people in other cities aren't doing. So it's really important to focus on the things that nobody else is doing. So entrepreneurs will move. They will get up and they will pick up and they'll move near the talent, they'll move near the money, and ag tech and fintech are really things that we're good at here. Ag tech just naturally, because we have some of the biggest ag tech firms in the world, and because we have the Danforth Plant Science Research Center. And then fintech, because you have the clients. It's very difficult to get an app in a financial services company because of all the regulations. But the financial services companies here have already committed to looking at these startups. So the doors have been opened. If you're going to start a fintech, you should be in St. Louis, because you're just going to have an easier time getting through the system.
I just like using the word fintech. I feel like that's. Is there a perfect ecosystem for St. Louis then, or do we know what that looks like? Is there a certain way we should be doing this?
Well, I think one of the areas where we're seeing a lot of traction that's working really well for our city is this concept of accelerators. So an accelerator is a program for early stage companies that includes both an investment and a program. It's usually for companies where it's already established, at least a product is built, but they're wanting to get more acceleration as far as their marketing and traction in the market. And Missouri actually has the 4th highest number of accelerators of any state. The only states that are ahead of us are behemoth population states of California, New York, and Texas. We're 4th after them. Per capita, we're 2nd. And almost all of those accelerators are in St. Louis. And that survey didn't even count BioGenerator or Arch Grants. Oh, wow. So we actually are getting huge traction from these accelerator programs, which are identifying things that we are really good at and are giving reason for entrepreneurs to come to St. Louis, in each case from around the world, to be able to participate in these programs and have the kind of connectivity, the open doors that you have in a city like St. Louis. It isn't so easy in those big metropolises.
That's right. It's not easy to call up a CEO, but it's much easier in St. Louis, because they'll call you back, or they may know somebody that you have met who will facilitate opening doors and facilitate connections. So the connections happen more rapidly here. It's not that it wouldn't happen, but here they happen more quickly and more easily.
Yeah, it's ironic that one of the biggest assets of St. Louis for entrepreneurship is actually the corporate community. We're always asking for more from the corporate community.
Has it been that way?
Would it be helpful? More funding?
Sure,
right.
but the fact is that is an asset that is distinctive, and the reason why it's so unique to St. Louis is I really believe the doors are more open here. You are 1 degree of separation from the most powerful people in some of the largest and most influential companies in the world, and these people really want to help. And there is a Midwestern sensibility into the way business is done in St. Louis, which is not the same to the way business is done in California or New York. And that is something that we're able to package in these accelerator programs, and we're able to market to bring great companies to St. Louis.
Were they slow to the game? Has it been that way for a while?
No, we literally are the accelerators. Are bringing people from around the world. I just met 2 guys from Australia that are participating in the 630 accelerator last night. There's some guys from London that came here. There is an Israeli entrepreneur that just came here for the Capital Innovators accelerator. So we are attracting talent worldwide. That is unheard of in a lot of other cities. You have like a Louisville, Kentucky, which is really good at food, like the Yum brands, and they have entrepreneurs based around food. They're not getting people from around the world. The fact that we're attracting worldwide talent it's kind of mind-boggling. I asked somebody from SLIC, the St. Louis Israeli Innovation Committee, which is bringing Israeli entrepreneurs here. I said, do people in Israel really know where St. Louis is? And he said, yes, they do, and they want to come start their businesses here. So I thought that was amazing. That's very exciting for us.
So what if this? I said you guys could be positive, so I will play the cynic. But what if this doesn't work? What's at stake for all of us?
St. Louis actually has a long history of having successful entrepreneurs. All the large companies we know today started as entrepreneurial firms. I think what is different is that now we really identify as an entrepreneurial community, that there is a subsect of the business community now that sort of brands itself into a culture and a community that is entrepreneurial. And when you create a community and define a culture, it attracts others. So the idea of, well, what if this doesn't work out? I don't really understand the question, because there's always going to be new companies, there's always going to be innovation, there's always going to be people looking to seize opportunity. I think just the thing that's changed in the last few years is that this group has come together and formed its own community rather than just being part of the general business community.
So you said the word brand, and you mentioned worldwide knowledge of St. Louis. So forgive me, I do not mean to be insensitive at all, but have the issues that we've been struggling with very publicly over the last 3 months, is that a factor in any of this conversation when you're talking to folks from outside of town?
Yes. Ferguson, obviously, you're referring to. That is a big deal. Global Hack, which is the weekend accelerator that gives $50,000 to the winners for 48 hours worth of work, is being held in Ferguson because the guys behind it, Travis Sheridan is one of those co-founders, they want to show that we are more than just a bunch of entrepreneurs that are in their own bubble, like you hear about in San Francisco with the Google bus and all that nonsense. We actually care. We're civically engaged here. We'd like to see our city do well, and Global Hack is going to be proof of that. They're going to hold a hackathon right in Ferguson, and the winners are going to win $50,000 for participating. So we're doing a good job. Every city has its own challenges, but I think we're addressing it.
I think it's a part of the story. I mean, I think the important part of Ferguson is to talk about what led to it. And one of the most important things about the things that are going on in entrepreneurship is that the community is actively trying to make it inclusive. I think you see that with Global Hack, actively going into Ferguson to hold their event, and with Diversify Us naturally winning Startup Weekend, that there's a real effort being made to be inclusive, and I think that's part of the St. Louis story.
You know, it's definitely unfortunate that St. Louis has become the battleground for some very difficult issues that are very real and happen in every city in America, and I don't believe St. Louis is in too worse or too better of a situation than most cities when it comes to the issues at hand in Ferguson. But I will say it's pretty inspiring that Diversify Us was inspired by what happened at Ferguson, and it's to me pretty inspiring that entrepreneurship can actually be part of the solution.
And don't downplay how much we all do work together here. There are other cities. An entrepreneur I talked to, the Australian entrepreneurs, they lived in New York for 6 years. They went back to Australia and came here, and they talked about how all the entrepreneurs in New York, I don't know if this is true, but wanted to stab each other to get ahead. A lot of cities, not everyone is pulling the same way. We always talk about that here and we sing like it's a great thing. Not all cities do that. Not all sectors work together. Everyone here is willing to help each other out, and so it's a really big deal.
We'll leave it there. We've got to get back to social media to see what you might want to say about this. The fire analogy is holding up. I'm just going to say it right now. Fire is trending. Something we haven't brought up at all, is there a role that our government locally or beyond should be playing in the conversation we're having here?
Stay out of the way.
Okay.
I mean, create policy that makes it easier for entrepreneurs to do the work that they need to do. I look at a program like Arch Grants that really is economic development, right? They're buying companies and talent to locate in downtown in the St. Louis region. They're incentivizing them to come down there. The more that we could make that possible on a larger scale, I think the better we're going to be.
Well, there are also things like the Missouri Technology Corporation, which invests directly into startups. They've helped Arch Grants raise some money. So certainly, stay out of the way is a valid point. But then also they do put money directly into the game too.
Keeping the kids that are graduating from college in St. Louis is a big deal, and SLU is doing a really good job. The government's doing a really good, the city government, getting engaged with the students. The students just had a competition at SLU. The winners had to go pitch the mayor and his administration, and the kids were saying, "This is amazing, I just pitched the mayor of St. Louis a business idea," and I think that makes them want to stay here more than just staying on campus, graduating, and fleeing
Another accessible CEO.
Yes.
I think government's main role is to solve the problems and address the issues that are important to the entrepreneurial community. Education is one. I mean, the community colleges and the high schools and the universities could turn out the talent that these firms need. That will go a long way.
I'll say one of the things that I think younger entrepreneurs don't think about, but is a big issue when we're talking about bringing in the investors and keeping investors, is our state income tax. It's a controversial issue, but the fact is a lot of our wealthiest citizens leave the state when they retire, and they move to places like Florida that don't have income tax. We actually need that money to stay in St. Louis because those are the people who have the greatest capacity to invest in our startups. And a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about that because they don't make enough money to pay any state income tax. But they're all fueled by people who do. And we are really losing out to some of our wealthiest citizens to states like Tennessee, Texas, and Florida. And I'm tired of seeing influential investors leave. And I know quite a few have, because when they stay here and get connected to our startup community, they're going to want to be a big part of it and invest in it.
Speaking of staying and leaving, not to pick on the journalists, but just for one more second, any big names that have stuck around or have taken off?
Jim McKelvey.
Square.
Stayed. Yes.
Oh,
go right ahead.
But Jim McKelvey
is a resident of Florida.
I wasn't going to say that out loud.
He is. I mean, let's be honest. Right. Jim McKelvey is one of the biggest proponents of this city. He's my partner. I love him.
Right.
In a plutonic kind of way. But the fact is, for whatever reason, he does not keep official residence here, and he is out of St. Louis, out of the state of Missouri, 6 months or more out of the year.
But he's probably the exception that keeps coming back.
Well, Square is certainly one of the highest.
12 months out of the year.
Square is certainly one of the highest profile examples of companies that have left. And there's either way. Answers is a huge company that has stayed in St. Louis. They're on the loop. There's either or.
The island gets left out every time down here.
It's okay. We feel the love.
But I'll just open up a blanket question here. You've been sitting back there hearing us talk. What's on your mind when it comes to the pulse of the startup scene in St. Louis?
Well, one of the things on my mind, and I commend the Nine Network and everybody here, is that it's a very rich and balanced discussion. I think that we've talked about a lot of different issues and that it's very complex. And I think that the willingness to have the conversation is very, very important. But just on your last question, I think a company that doesn't get mentioned a lot that's been very inspirational to me is Worldwide Technology. I think what Dave Stewart has done has been phenomenal. And strategically being in St. Louis and staying in St. Louis and building a fantastic company, I think is very inspirational.
Was there anything in St. Louis that had anything to do with having an idea one day and winning a competition the next day?
You mean, was there...
or the fact that the competition was even here. I'm just curious if there's a St. Louis component. Could you have done what you did with Diversify Us anywhere, aside from the fact that perhaps you would have had the inspiration given the events here?
I think that it could be developed anywhere, but you do need a reason to conclude the things that I concluded. It was because of the current situation and not wanting things to, just fearing the worst and not wanting our city to be in such a, calamitous situation. So, but I think that could happen anywhere. But it's because you need this kind of thing anywhere. The history, our city has a unique history, but it's not so unique that other cities don't share something about it. But lots of cities have 100-year history of racial segregation and so forth. We could talk, this could be anywhere, but it is here though.
Show us the future 1 year after winning the Startup Challenge for you. What will it look like?
Hopefully it's a team that's expanded greatly, and we created a couple jobs, and we're gearing up to enter into some clinical trials.
What do you need from anything you need from anyone at this table to help make that happen?
We always need money and publicity helps lead to the additional funding. Just spreading the word and letting people know that what we're doing is both important and that we have the right technology platform to make it happen.
It seems like that's a message that I hear a lot, that there's more than just money to be made in the startup world. Has the entrepreneur changed? That there also is, you say your work is important. I feel like there's a sense of commitment and duty to the community. Is that just the way the entrepreneur is wired now?
I think it is. I don't know
or
if it's now.
Or is that a response to what consumers demand?
I think entrepreneurs are just passionate about what they've come up with, whether it's a new idea or a new way to do something. I think we're a passionate bunch that aren't easily told no. So I think that's probably always been the case in entrepreneurs.
I always look at, for my organization, Venture Cafe, I always say that innovation is a process to improve the human condition, right? I mean, if we're going to fix the ills of our society, be it education, government, healthcare, we're going to need to innovate. And so, yes, innovation might lead to entrepreneurship, but innovation could lead to better student learning outcomes. It could lead to a better served populace. So yeah, I think there is this overarching idea that innovation and entrepreneurship can lead to a better humanity.
I also would add that entrepreneurship, I believe, is critical to changing the narrative of St. Louis, especially at a time when there's a lot of negativity about Ferguson and about the way we calculate our crime statistics and what that says about us to the world. What I find very interesting is my students at WashU who are engaged in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, who are interning at these companies, who are working downtown, they actually know a very different St. Louis than my parents know. If you talk to a lot of average St. Louisans, they know St. Louis as this semi-Rust Belt, Midwestern, average city. But if you talk to the young people that are involved in the entrepreneurship scene, they see it as a dynamic, exciting, growing, diverse. You're absolutely right. I actually met a young lady a couple months ago from Austin. She moved to St. Louis without a job to get a job as a programmer. Which is one of the hottest, most things you need in the world, right, is the programmers. And I said, why did you move here? And she said, because Austin is already established. She's like, I wanted to be part of a city that was a startup itself. And she actually moved from Austin, Texas, which is known as a great startup community, because she wanted to be part of the story that was unfolding in St. Louis. That is what our young people are seeing right now, and that is so critical to changing the perception.
We can't leave it on a better note than that, but find us online. We'll continue the conversation there. Thank you all very much.
At Venture Cafe, she's an attorney, patent attorney from Boulder, Colorado. She was here for a conference, and she was hanging around, having a good time, and she said, I wish Boulder was this vibrant. And I said, Boulder, Colorado, right? Because I've been there, and it's pretty awesome. She's like, no, but it's not this. This is, and she was just saying this, and I didn't know what this was, but she felt it, and she just said she liked the authenticity, she loved the energy, and sometimes, Cliff has mentioned this several times, we're our own worst enemy, and there are people from the outside. We should start listening to them. When they come here, either from Austin or Boulder or anywhere else, and saying, St. Louis is really awesome, they are speaking the truth. Trust them, and don't dissuade them, and don't tell them that they might be smoking something. Maybe that helps, but they are speaking the truth.
It's a generational thing, though. I think a lot of St. Louisans over 40 or 50 still think of this as sort of, the Rust Belt, the declining. If I meet someone in that age group and tell them I write about the St. Louis economy, they say, oh, isn't it terrible? We've lost Anheuser-Busch, we've lost TWA, May department stores and all that. I say,
young people haven't even heard of some of those companies.
Right. Yeah. It's whether are you looking backward or are you looking forward?
And young people demand the things that we've been talking about here tonight, right? Okay with failure, acceptance of risk, diverse voices, hearing from everyone, collaboration versus competition. That's what young people are looking for, and that's what the entrepreneurship community is seeking to offer and doing better at that every day.
And young
people are responding to that.
Public transportation. That's a challenge here that we can do better at, but Lyft needs to be allowed into the city. I hope the government's listening. It's very important. There's entrepreneurs, young people moving here from cities where they don't have cars or driver's license, like like New York. We want to keep those people here.
Cliff, what do you think about that? And the reason I ask is sometimes we get lumped into different categories, and I don't know your politics, but somebody might think if a person was against the state income tax, they might not really care for public transportation.
Wow,
that was quite a joke.
That was really assuming.
Sorry.
I'm just curious because I wonder if there are a lot of overlapping things.
Well,
that
Ed actually brought up a beautiful
punch
free
that
market
in the
answer
app, by the way.
to your question. Uber and Lyft actually provide incredible, affordable, reliable transportation that is now being disallowed and stunted because of government regulations, completely unnecessarily protecting business interests. Right? We have government regulations that were written by the business people to protect their own turf. And that doesn't help anybody. And there are questions about some forms of public transportation if we have enough density to really support it economically, right? Because we're not a highly dense city. But entrepreneurs created answers to those questions, right? Uber and Lyft actually provide a very effective and sophisticated low-cost public transportation public system that actually utilizes resources people already have, their own cars. And our city is fighting it. So, I think that if you let entrepreneurs solve problems, you will end up with fewer problems.
You know what I like about everyone at this table? No matter how bad the question is or how misinformed the question is, you all give great answers. Okay, anyone with the last thought that you were dying, Katie?
Well, I want to keep companies like Nanopore here. That's the point of a lot of what we're doing is that great companies are starting, and there are tons of things bubbling up, but we have to get the capital off the sidelines because we cannot be the incubator for the nation. We can't have these companies start and do great and then get funded and go somewhere else. We've got to get the capital off the sidelines. We've been talking about that a lot on Accelerate St. Louis, and I just hope it happens. I think the time is right. I feel the momentum's right.
I'm seeing some interesting things on that question. So that's always a fear that we will incubate companies, that then they'll get bought up by bigger money or larger companies that's going to move them. And that's going to happen a few times, and that's okay, right? It's a messy system, and this is part of the way it works. And sometimes we pull companies from other cities, and it's going to be, there's going to be wins and there's going to be losses, and that's okay. But what we are seeing in some early results is in cases where they did move the CEO to another city, they actually left the operations here. And two companies in our portfolio that I can think of, they were running operations both in the Bay Area and here. When they looked at the cost difference and they looked at the quality of the talent and the loyalty of the talent, of the employees, they've actually decided to grow the St. Louis office and not the San Francisco office.
If you don't say, I can even say the Gainsight is
Well, that's
probably
the
one
one.
that you're talking about. It's 20 jobs.
Brian always knows
I
all
know
the
that.
beans.
I know that Jim said that they're going to be ramping up to close to 80 employees here
That's
in St.
right.
Louis. So yeah, having
I don't know
companies
if
get
that was
some money.
public information yet, Brian.
having companies get some money and getting out of town, but keeping that operations here is just as good.
Yeah, cat's out of the bag. It's Gainsight, and yeah, so they're actually going to keep their office in the Bay Area at the same size, and they're going to scale St. Louis. And it actually, interestingly, it's not just of cost. We tend to think it's just because it's cheap here. It goes back to a negative
Jim
narrative.
doesn't like it when people say that in McKelvey.
He does not.
No, it's actually because of the less turnover. There's huge turnover in the Bay Area. It's a more transient population, and they poach each other. There's horrible poaching between companies, and they're just revolving doors between one company to the next. And their employees here have been here the whole time and have been completely reliable, great workers, deliver what they need to do, and they love the workforce. So they're actually scaling here. So even in some cases where we might lose a company, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised in some cases.
I do think we need to embrace risk more. I think that's something where we could improve on, and I've seen it change a lot in 2 or 3 years, because there are really talented people who are going to have not the right idea on the first go around. Who I hope they stick with it and they have enough support system that they find the next thing.
Developers and programmers are getting 6-figure retention salaries at Facebook and Google just to not quit and go to the competitor. We don't have that problem here. So what Cliff said is true.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
Island?
We've talked about the concern for diversity, and one thing that has jumped out at me is that when you have inclusion without diversity, that's the same as that's the good old boys network. That's nepotism potentially. But if you have diversity without inclusion, then what you have is leadership devoid of perspective. People don't, you're not including people in the decision making. But what we need, I think, is diversity and inclusion together. Neither one by themselves, but both together And if you have that, then you have leadership that has a perspective outside of themselves. You have people who are getting opportunities that they don't ordinarily get. And I think if we pursue those kinds of things, as Diversify Us will help you do, then I think we create a better environment for everybody.
I should tweet that. My phone died, though. That was good.
Yeah, who's going to invent the battery, for crying out loud? That's who's going to. Can we download your app yet?
You can't download it yet. We're going to have some trials.
Come on.
Hey, and he won the next day. I want to download it on day 3.
But we plan to launch in January. But you can sign up now on our website and be a part of the trials that we're going to start in the next month.
I'm in. All right. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate it.